I mi fiara ní géad ochtaní, do be mahar an chéad gilidor chosanta a Dunwario.
I was 8 years old, and on the 12th of February was a Sunday. Like every family, I suppose, around the world, we sat down to have Sunday dinner.
And gunmen broke into the house and shot my husband 14 times in front of myself and my family.
An rud is mó bhfuil cefnága na fumana na gani. Tá na fumana sin an gohan sula go fáil.
When Pat used to visit his clients in various police stations, he was receiving threats via the clients. Some of them at the start were derogatory comments, and then they escalated to threats that he would be dead soon.
Yanni ifigi an RUC baggart go minic dochlíont mahar. Gurnian fi Dunwaruer no gur chart, Gurnian fi Dunwaruer.
We felt that this was maybe an interrogation technique used by the police to frighten the person that they had under arrest, and it wasn't specifically targeting the lawyer.
I think even loyalists at the time were taken aback by the insistence of the police that they needed to kill my father because lawyers were very much off limits.
Few Gurushe Racha Minik Gulyor, Gurushe and a wild Dagriachta paramilitia, ach, near Togu Ian Elisha Real or an hour shaw. Marshin Kahra Glakulish Gur Dunwariwe Jirach, Tushk Gurushe Yanu Ahajibrahim.
There was an elevation of the threat just a matter of weeks before he was murdered when a British minister in the House of Commons made a statement that we felt gave the green light for killers to target my father.
I was in the kitchen, as it turned out, probably making the dinner, and the evening news was on when I heard the statement.
Mr. Hull's comments came during a Westminster debate on the committee stage of the Prevention of Terrorism Bill. He said that certain solicitors were unduly sympathetic to one or other terrorist organisation and then indicated that he meant the IRA. Mr. Mellon said that the assertions were a foul and unwarranted slur on the profession.
One of our politicians said, do you know you have probably signed the death warrant of these solicitors or lawyers that you're referring to? We do know there were government meetings where the Chief of Police, Chief of the Army and Cabinet Ministers would share information. This is one reason why we need a full inquiry.
Tá an fisrú hart a gceann sé seachtaine. Irene idir cigirí an CID agus an branch speisialta an rain ille chóchtach den na Paulini atá a gceannas ar chúsaí faisnéise. Is ige atá an focail scoil. Ní ghautar den be. Cás dúnta. Chábhlíon a raig den an bert cigirí den CID íireacht an códa á oscailt. Tá siad cinnte gur a ból dóibh cé bharrig Pat Finucane. Tian dine darabanam Ken Barrett a dangaválio. Tastin weg ólas a valar tú arigid.
Out of the blue, Barrett rang to meet Johnson and I. Said he wanted to help. This was after he'd been in Castlereagh. So we had to meet him with the special branch because he was a terrorist.
Well, here, listen. Ken Barrett wants to speak to CID. If you can open Ken Barrett, you're opening a can of worms. Ken Barrett is the officer commanding the Woodvale UDA. A camp for all the awful murders, you know, for all the bad people.
Barrett sitting beside me in the back of the car. The special branch man's the driver. Johnson asked Ken Barrett, who murdered the solicitor Pat Finucane.
And he tells me, in through the door, boom, down the hallway, right? He's right. He's firing shots through that glass door. There's a glass door leading to the kitchen. He's firing shots as he's going in. Do, do.
It's being tape recorded, so it's on tape what he said.
An rud a dúirt Barrett leo JD sé sin a chluisin so áte gan eile. Áitiútar gur bheith sin chománaíon glúisteán in áiríre, ní duine daoine a rinne lábhach.
Now, that was one of the most controversial murders of the Troubles. You can imagine how we felt when we had that on tape. Here we could clear the murder of Pat Finucane, but the tape went missing. Barrett was too valuable an agent.
At the very core of that was the protection of their agents. And that was paramount. That they put that beyond the saving of life.
Tá sé ar chumas an French speisialta bach a chur rih isrithe a hagan salach ar a chudebre féin.
In theory, the rule of law applied to everyone. But in practice, what you see was a system whereby the special branch of the police could intervene in that criminal justice process and essentially prevent it from being applied. So they could stop police detectives from interviewing someone. They could stop police detectives from charging someone because they were going to become an informant.
Special branch would have been, they've been described as a force within a force, and they would have had primacy over all policing matters. If they wanted to arrest somebody for the murder of Pat Finucane, Special Branch would have to okay it first. So they always were able to direct and frustrate.
Don't confuse the criminal investigation department with the special branch. We are after crime and criminals. The special branch are political police.
Vous avez le développement considérable des services de renseignement et une surveillance généralisée de la population. On estime qu'en 1976, vous avez 40% pratiquement de la population nord-irlandaise qui est présent dans les fiches de la Special Branch, avec un système informatisé pour l'une des toutes premières fois dans l'histoire pour traiter ces fiches.
Tugann sheriffí ronda na Breataine túsáite de chosint a good gníomhairí ar ais nó ar éigen. Tá bhar seo déach brathadóirí dul am an coriúlachta agus dúnmharú féin uaireanta.
I realised that by asking questions about my husband's murder, we were actually looking at a policy that was being conducted against everyone. We had used the word collusion, and I think people used to feel sorry for me.
It isn't just a narrative of collusion, it is a fact. London Police Commissioner, a man called John Stevens, and he conducted an investigation. And he concluded that there were hundreds of cases of collusion. Probably the most infamous example is Brian Nelson. The British Army, or MI5, actually ran somebody and gave him photographs, gave him the addresses of people so that he could go and take a photograph of their house, of their car, and pass that to terrorist colleagues. Brian Nelson, who was in charge of UDA intelligence, was actually being run by the British.
It allowed the British state to ensure that those who were being targeted, those who were being killed were, as far as the state was concerned, the right people. And he was central to the plot of targeting and ultimately killing my father.
Cuireann Fitzrú John Stevens as na díolseoirí, ach dar leis an Ganasí ó Scotland Yard cuireann sé as the herbhí sí rúnda na Breataine freisin.
Whenever John Stevens came here and was carrying out his investigation, and one night there was a mysterious fire which burnt a lot of and destroyed a lot of his material. And what we know now is that that fire was lit by another branch of the intelligence services because they were making a deliberate attempt to sabotage the work that he was doing.
Fitzríonn fuireann John Stevens an chléin fartíocht idir díolseoirí agus Póilíní. Tá an scéal níos casta nuair a aimsíonn siad tuile chléin fartíochta. Bhuineann sé leis na díolseoirí agus éanad rúnda den ARM an Force Research Unit nó FRU agus an gníomhaire Brian Nelson.
Seo litir a scríb an Tyra Cosanta, Thomas King. I believe that it would be extremely serious if Nelson were to disclose in public what he knows about the handling of agents in Northern Ireland.
Gautar Brian Nelson, ach le cinú nach nochtar méid na chléin fartíochta, plédálan Nelson ciúntach agus Gartar Pianoser.
There was no chance to cross-examine and find things out from him because he just pleaded guilty and they said, fine, we sentence you to such and such, and that was that.
The fact that informers and agents exist is well known to terrorist groups, and it is known as a general fact to the public. What is not known is the extent of such operations and the capabilities of the agencies which mount them.
La FRU, parce qu'elle était associée à un certain nombre de controverses, a été dissoute. Mais le savoir-faire, la méthode, elle persiste et elle a été recréée sous un autre nom, le Joint Support Group, qui a été envoyé en Irak pour y mener des opérations qui sont classifiées pour l'essentiel.
Joint Support Group, FRU, SRU, MRF. A gahabh na mblianta buineann na hanimneacha seo go léir leis an éanad céanna de Locht Fascination na Breataine an áiríre. Cuireann málar túiseán na hanimneacha marúil mór ar dhaoine, agus seansgurbí an chastacht bhreise seo go díreach atá teastáil ó heiribhí sí na Breataine. Filann cás Finucane in Nollaig nó Conlé, demlíonna tris a bharathe, nuair a ligean an díolseoir William Stobie le hiiriseoir gurb eisin a chur an guna ar fáid an chuir. Der sé gur brathadóir de chud an bhreintse speisialta é féin freisin. Chábhlíonn ina dhéag sin maríonn díolseoirí é. Tréis na hadamhála seo, Filann John Stevens ar bhéal feriste chun dúnmharú an tliadóra a Isrú.
And I said to the chief superintendent, "What? Listen, we know who killed Pat Finucane."
And we told Lord Stevens that he had admitted on tape. Swazerbrand had switched the tape. Tax Sergeant Brown was allowed to listen to the tape recording that they gave us. So we brought this to the attention of Stevens. Look, these boys are telling you garbage here. Barrett was sentenced to life imprisonment. He turned round in the court and told Johnson and I, "You two are effing dead. I'm going to put 2 bullets in each of your faces." Within 6 months of him being convicted, I received a letter. They stated, "Do I know of any reasons why Ken Barrett shouldn't be released under the Good Friday Agreement?" I says, "Well, apart from the fact that he's going to kill me." But that didn't matter. He was released.
Cuireann cóin túin in chéasta deire le trocha blian de chuimhlinn tuilteach, chun na paramilite go léir thuirteach sa réiteach scuiltar a lán prísúnach sair.
The reason that prisoners who were sentenced to life are out walking the streets now, it's part of the Good Friday Agreement. The Good Friday Agreement would not have happened unless the prisoners were released. And it was de facto, it was an amnesty.
Níl muintir Finucane sásta le déire Ken Barrett as dún varú an ahar. Is mian lewa ailemach céhí a ganas an áiríre.
The man who came into my house and killed my father was an informer for the police. The man who supplied the weapons was an informer for the police. The man who was in charge of the unit was an informer. The man who supplied the intelligence was also an informer. So this isn't just the feeling of one agent or informer who maybe did or maybe didn't pass on information to his superiors. They wanted to have a system that was designed to take life, not prevent it.
They fear the truth. You look at these individuals, Mark Haddock, Kenny Barrett, Mark Barr, all these guys that are in the fore, they're all agents of the special branch, every one of them. We wanted them for murder.
These were people who went into our house, but who were directed by people in the shadows, by people within the police, within the army, but further up that chain, within the political world as well.
Now, we know that senior figures in MI5 and in the army, military intelligence, repeatedly asked for cover. So when you're involved in something like that, you have to be able to go back to a politician and say, is this okay?
The intelligence framework within Belfast in 1989 had very little barriers from being on the ground up until the Joint Intelligence Committee, which sat in the Cabinet Office, and right into the very levers of power. So that is where our accusation has always been, that this was very much a political decision.
I 2003 fáil Sían Stevens Thorascail Cuig lehanach déag a chimre vilún lehanach más fear. Dennan sé gerán gur currag bakar, agus dainin sé an chléan fartíocht riv an dún varú agus an ieg. Darla minter Finucane natá thread chun an íringe a hort chun solis, níl scéal am lán an varú sa Thorascail bheag seo. Blian an ieg sin, Galen Realtas na Bratainne agus captar an brehef Corey chun ober John Stevens sa afrahenú. Cinnan an brehef Canadach seo gur gá fisrúchan pa bli.
Judge Corey recommended an inquiry, and we thought, marvellous, at long last, we're going to get the inquiry. And then the British government changed the rules.
Now, the British government's response to that was immediately to rush legislation through the UK Parliament that changed the whole statutory basis for public inquiries, that allowed a minister to interfere at practically every level.
We started lobbying at national and international level for the establishment of a public inquiry.
In 2012, we were led to believe that the British government would have an inquiry.
We got a message the Prime Minister would like to speak with me, and that I would be very happy.
And we were brought to Downing Street by David Cameron, who started the meeting off
by saying he was very sorry about what had happened. It was horrendous.
And told us he was a young man when my father was killed, that he has no baggage with that period of time, that he wants to get to the truth.
There had been collusion, which was not acceptable, and what he was going to do was order a review. And I thought, that's not the right word. We've had a review, we've had Stevens reviewing, we've had Judge Corey reviewing. We do not need another review. Sorry. Don't want to hear any more of this. End of meeting.
Ultimately, the UK government commissioned something very different, which was the De Silva review of papers. De Silva had no powers to compel the production of evidence.
You know, you can't read it. I mean, it's redacted. So they say, oh, yes, we gave them that. But what do you do with that?
So how do you derive at what is true from that? Who makes the decision that my family aren't allowed to see that? Is it the security services themselves? Is it the barrister? Is it the government?
Is cúis céine fósa I tátal na tuarascála seo bharú an tliadóra. Cáineann sí an tliar heb glan rialta sé agsúla déan thoras, tuairt a good gníomhairí clí leis an dlí.
Collusion should never, ever happen. So on behalf of the government and the whole country, let me say again to the Finucane family, I am deeply sorry.
It's like someone coming up to you and saying, I'd like to apologise to you. And you would say, oh, right. What do you want to apologise for? Well, I can't tell you. I can't tell you what I want to apologise for, but it's really serious. And that is exactly what the apology was in the Houses of Parliament.
Má tá córas stad agad a chugan álas de foreign military, a churann ar a gomas brícanna ahanda a waru, ar bhealach a hosnaíonn an stad go hiomlán, an sin tá córas farfa agad de assassination by proxy.
Tá cá bhaintear Finucane tris feimú na bhríomhaonta paramílata an lochtad an phobal, chomáilis an báirt chinúnach atá ag brathadóirí. Is cúis iontais freisin líon na brathadóirí seo agus na gníomhairí eile a bhí buinteach le marú an tliadóra. A ghábhíle sa hendiag den an John Stevens, an Tierna Stevens inis, cáine os cór cuiste Parliamente thunscail san na faisnéise agus an chamaléireach do bhainin leis.
There was the RUC, MI5, the Army, doing different things. And when you talk about intelligence, of the 210 people we arrested, only 3 weren't agents. And some of them were agents for all 4 of those particular organisations, fighting against each other and doing things and creating a large sum of money, which was all against the public interest and was creating mayhem in Northern Ireland.